Well, welcome to the celebration of the life of Paul Smith. And just your presence here speaks volumes to the family. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to open in prayer, and then we're going to have some songs. Thank you, Jesus. From our good friend Paul, thank you for his love for you, his love for others, his dedication to his family. Thank you for his zeal for life. And we thank you that he has life in you right now. We dedicate this time to the glory of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah, we're just going to sing two songs right now. So let's just stand in honor of Paul and the life he lived and just the God that he served.
God to thee.
And when I think that God, his son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart? Then I will bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how
this next song is just called I Got the Joy in My Heart. And I remember actually, hearing him sing this just in a preschool class I was helping him in once. And just, I was reflecting just all the children, just the lives that he affected just through his ministry. So, yeah, let's just sing this remembrance of him and just the lives that he impacted.
I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay.
And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart.
I've got the love of Jesus down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay.
And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart.
I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay.
And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart.
You may be seated. So right now we're going to give you an opportunity. We're going to play another song, and during that song, the family wanted to give you an opportunity to take communion. Paul was a follower of Jesus, and Jesus commands his followers to take communion as a representation, as a remembrance of the sacrifice that he had made on our behalf. And so Paul's life, everything about Paul was in the shadow of the cross of Christ, and that's why we're here to celebrate his life. And in the midst of mourning, we know that he is with Jesus and with God, and that's why we could sing songs like The Joy in Our Heart. So if you would like to participate during the song, there's two stations back there and two up here. And just during the song, you come up alone or with your family or a friend, and you just kind of take the cracker and dip it in the juice, and then you can partake. Bring it back to your seat and partake if you'd like. But anyway, during that song, it's just one song. So if you want to participate, go ahead and jump up there. Okay?
It's amazing how you can speak right to my heart without saying no word. You can light up the dark.
There's usually two parts to a funeral. There's the eulogy and then a message of hope. And eulogy literally means to speak well of. Well, Paul made that part really easy for us. It's easy to speak well of Paul. Paul Allen Smith was born on September 14th, 1972 in Pasadena, California, to Ressie, Steve Smith, and Betty Ann Smith. He passed into the hands of his father November 11th, 2021. His older brother David was 2 years old when Paul was born. His sister Christine came 6 years later. The family lived in Oregon for 2 years and then relocated back to Westminster, California in 1977. As a youth, Paul played baseball, football, and basketball. His father was the coach for many of those sports. He attended Stacy Middle School, where his mother, Betty, taught. Paul graduated from Westminster High School in 1990, and he began working for his father at Huntington Supply right out of high school. And those are some facts about his life as a child, but we asked, actually, his brother David asked if he could come up and share his thoughts as an older brother about Paul. David?
Hi, I'm David, Paul's older brother, and on behalf of our family, I want to thank you for coming here to help us remember and celebrate Paul. I've lived on the East Coast for about 25 years, so I know that I don't have a lot of the same memories of Paul that you do, but I want to share a few things that I remember about Paul from the first half of his life. So it's ironic that my brother Paul was a correctional officer. Because of the three children in our family, myself, my sister Christine, and Paul, he was always the most likely to go to jail someday. This is not to say that he was a bad person, but he was definitely mischievous. And when asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, his answer would always be a bank robber. It's also true whenever there was a controversy in our family, Paul was usually at the center of it. But thankfully, as he grew up, Paul's mischievous nature softened and was more towards joking around and telling dad jokes and usually pulling harmless pranks, which I'm sure you're all familiar with because that was Paul. To me at least, Paul was comfortable as a homebody because he didn't seem to like traveling much. Maybe it was because when he worked for our dad, right out of high school, he used to make deliveries all over LA and Orange County, driving 8 hours a day. However, he did make it onto a short church mission trip to India. He once floated down the Mississippi with some friends, and even made it to Yankee Stadium. But overall, he didn't like to travel much, and he was always one to make his feelings known. Take, for example, when our family took a road trip to visit family in Illinois by way of a stop in Texas. So it was a long trip, at least 2 weeks. And while my cousin Dennis, Christine, and I sat in the second row of seats, the bank of seats of our station wagon, Paul had built himself a den in the cargo area in the back. And instead of having, back in the day, we didn't have phones or video games to keep us occupied. So instead, we had headphones attached to cassette players to help us pass the time. And I think it was at a truck stop somewhere around halfway on the trip that Paul acquired a Beach Boys album. And to make his opinion of the trip known, he would repetitively yell out the lyrics to Sloop John B. And those go, "Let me go home. Why won't they let me go home? This is the worst trip I've ever been on." And that was Paul. My sister and I have a reputation of being competitive. But that's because Paul was always the one to beat. For example, he would always dominate whenever we played video games, especially sports games like NHL hockey on Sega Genesis. So it should come as no surprise that one day he came up with a new catchphrase for himself. Paul is king. He would say it all the time as his victories grew. And at one point, he even tried to teach my son Noah when he was a toddler to say, Paul is king. Inevitably, my sister and I would roll our eyes as Paul gloated in his victories. But more often than not, we would bow our heads in shame to another loss to the king. And that was Paul. Paul also loved sports. He was the most sports-oriented person in our family. And for many years, he played youth football in Westminster. And while he enjoyed it, I don't think he really loved it because he didn't continue on with school sports as he grew older. But he was always good at physical activities, including teaching himself to do a front flip like Luke Skywalker with Yoda on his back. Mind you, we didn't have a trampoline, so he spent hours bouncing on his bed until he could do it. Similarly, he was obsessed with TV wrestling for many years and would practice acrobatic moves on his bed as well. And that was Paul. It was through his love of sports that Paul, being the middle child, found what he really seemed to love, at least from an older brother's perspective, and that was attention. I remember one time back in the early 90s, he and his friends started attending games at the new local roller hockey team, the Anaheim Bullfrogs. Paul and his friends started dressing up for the games and making signs to cheer on the players. Once they were even invited to come by the team to come down to the arena floor to put on a show during an intermission. So there was Paul with his friends, dressed in grass skirts and coconut bras, lip-syncing to the Village People's YMCA as the crowd went crazy. And that was Paul. Similarly, my brother Paul found a real outlet in what I always considered the most unlikely places: musical theater. As a kid, Paul hated musical theater, or at least he was very ambivalent about it, because whenever my mom would watch musicals on TV, he would be gone. But when he fell into the My Art world, he really blossomed as a person. It gave him an outlet to be funny and goofy, as well as to be kind and supportive to the younger kids in the various shows, and that was Paul too. So thank you, Paul, for being these things to us: mischievous, outspoken, competitive, out of the ordinary, extroverted, as well as kind and supportive. As my sister Christine said, he did nothing in moderation, but always made it look effortless. The king may be dead, but I'm sure that his memory will live on for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So as you hear about Paul's childhood, you know why he was so good with children, because he never grew up. And I say that with just a fond memory of all my 4 children that he impacted over the years. And it was just Paul. Paul was always there at church. Paul was always there caring and noticing children, noticing them, looking them in the eye, and making life fun for them. And so his involvement with our ministry was just precious. And there's a lot of now adults here that are like, oh my gosh, impacted by Paul's life. And in my art world, I want to just give you a little bit more of his story going forward after David went to the East Coast. Really, it was in his late teens that Paul was asked by his sister. They needed some muscle on stage for the My Art play. And so Paul and his friends got involved in that, and he stayed, and he blossomed. So much so that he became known as the big brother of My Art. He was the one that everyone looked to, and he was so involved in those things. Paul got involved at our church from its beginning. He was in a small group of mine with men, And I just really, right away, enjoyed him as a friend and saw his kind spirit in his heart, his love for people, his love for God, and just how he was so thoughtful. One of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. He would listen with his eyes. He would hear you, and then he'd usually do something special later on. And that was kind of Paul's, how he was. I remember times going to Mexico, and we would build homes, and Paul would be there just for building homes for people that didn't have one. And he would serve, and he would serve. And I was on that trip to India with him, and he would be concerned about sharing the love of Jesus with people who had never heard. Paul cared about other people. He always cared about others, and he was so good with those things. There was one time that April, so during our small group, Paul started talking about this young woman. And we're like, okay, what's the deal, Paul? You know, I need to talk a little bit more and a little bit more. And so here's the story. So one time April was attending a My Art show for her, really to see her 10-year-old friend Stephanie, who was, yes. And really, April called Stephanie her little sister, and because she knew their family since April was 5 years old. So there was just this closeness. And so Stephanie approached Paul, and mind you, Stephanie was 10 years old at this time, and she approached Paul and said, "This is my big sister April. Take her on a date and marry her so that you can be my real big brother." To which Paul responded, "That's a big commitment for one date." And Stephanie replied, "Well, at least be her friend. She doesn't have any." So I don't know about that part. But anyway, and here's the cool part about Paul. And this will make you, so April never gave Paul her number, but he still found a way to call her a week later. And so just being that thoughtful, quiet, behind-the-scenes guy, he gives April a call, and their first date was an Angel game. He would want me to say a Yankee Angel game, and they went to because he was such a fond lover of the Yankees. Not sure why. And but that very first date, Paul asked April about her relationship with Jesus. That was important to Paul. That was the most important thing, and he led with that because it was so critical in his life. Their first kiss was on Paul's 29th birthday behind the Harbor House Cafe. And 1 year later, he proposed to her in the same spot. So very thoughtful. Paul and April were married May 3rd, 2003. And it was interesting because, in a sense, they were married twice that day. And we had to go to a nursing home where his great-uncle Larry was, that he had lived with and taken care of in his twilight years. And Paul wanted Larry to be a part of the witnesses to his wedding. So we went to the nursing home and redid the vows. And again, Paul was that type of a person. He obtained his degree in sociology from Cal State Long Beach, graduating cum laude. And in 2007, Paul started as a deputy juvenile corrections officer for Orange County. And Paul was different for those kids than a lot of his coworkers, or at least the way those kids were used to. And they knew he cared for them. And he ran his own programming. If they read a book, he would bring in a movie as a reward. And if they didn't listen, he would bring movies as a punishment, like Justin and Kelly, and things that would make them sit through. So, but he impacted his coworkers as well with his loving character and his bold testimony of his faith. April received many kind words from his coworkers about how he impacted them in his friendship while working. While dating, April asked Paul if he was okay with adoption. And after facing 6 years of infertility, April said, "This is not the right way, or it's not the right time." So in December 2008, they decided to look into adoption. They chose Bethany Christian Services, and 8 months later, God brought them, listen to this, 8-month-old Kayla, born in December of 2008. On Wednesday, April was feeling like God was providing. On that Saturday, she had a dream that God was giving them a girl. On Monday, they got the call, and they had Kayla in their home on Friday. The providence of God continued to follow them, and now the family of 3 was complete. Paul loved being Kayla's dad. He was so good with her. One would say he was great with her. He loved to tease her and just being together, picking her up from school every day, just having that time together in the car. Paul was described as the logical parent, and he would always teach her to do the honorable thing. He always challenged her to ask, what would God want you to do? Paul would take Kayla to Cal State Long Beach sporting events, Dodger games, and other activities. And he always did the little things for his family, for April and Kayla, giving thoughtful and creative gifts. He would buy them just what they wouldn't even think of, but it was so deep and so meaningful. When I was remembering that about Paul with April, I remembered this hanging in my office. And this is a picture. It's called The Daily Bread. And I had just, in passing, in our small group, mentioned that this picture was hanging in my grandfather's study and how it was, I just always had that fond memory. A week later, Paul shows up and he gives me this. And it's still hanging in my study at home. That's the kind of man Paul was and Paul is. And I think it's important that as we talk about Paul, we can talk about him leaving this life, but because he's in Jesus, Paul is continuing to live on, and we will see him again. And so I'll probably mix up how I talk about Paul, because he was and he is, and he still is. And so just such a thoughtful person. They had Kayla involved in theater at an early age. In fact, the day they took her home that weekend, they went to a musical together, even though she was just joined their family. Kayla, April, and Paul were all in one show together, the only one, The Wizard of Oz. Paul was the Cowardly Lion. April was a poppy, and Kayla was snow. And it's a beautiful picture. Hopefully they put that in the slideshow you'll see in a minute. He had 2 characters that just kind of demonstrate, if you put these 2 characters together, it just describes Paul so well. He played the Cowardly Lion, which we know ended up not so cowardly, and Little Abner. Put those 2 together and you have Paul. That's kind of who he is. And so hopefully those have just triggered some thoughts and some memories in your mind about Paul, his life, what David shared, what I was able to share from the family. This is Paul. This is what we're going to hear talk about. So Christine is going to come up and give you an opportunity to share some of your own thoughts and some of your own memories as well. She's going to do that now.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Paul's sister. I do have a name, but I'm much more known by my title of Paul's sister. So if you call me that, it's A-okay. All right. Right? Do you remember the movie Sleepless in Seattle? When Tom Hanks plays a recent widow who's on the phone with a psychologist on a radio show. And Dr. Fieldstone says, "Tell me what was so special about your wife." And Tom Hanks replies with, "Well, how long is your program?" And now I get that. Now that we have this amazing person that we could sit here for hours and share happy memories and stories of, and we have the opportunity now to go ahead and share some of those. There's definitely no pressure to feel like you have to say something eloquent or anything like that. It can be, just a quick little memory. Like I remember one of Paul's favorite practical jokes to play on me was when I would be in the shower and kind of ready to wrap up in the nice warm shower, he would throw open the bathroom door, turn off the lights, walk over to the shower, and pour a cup of cold water on my head. Often. He also would sign my birthday and Christmas presents Paul Smith every time, my entire life. Like, I needed to know his last name for some reason, so he wasn't confused with the other Paul I was receiving birthday and Christmas gifts at 8 years old. We have Robert and Ryan, right, that are going to have some handheld microphones So if you would like to share something, please feel free to just raise your hand. They will come to you. You do not have to come up. And I'll try, if I can see who you are, to kind of point you out. So please feel free to share some stories.
I'm a Yankee fan. Unfortunately, I'm sure many of you are thinking, but I am a Yankee fan, as was Paul. And I have my Yankee shirt on. And I had mentioned, this was, 20 years ago, I had mentioned to Paul at church one day, knowing that he was also a Yankee fan, that I had been to a game the night before, and it was for my birthday, and my parents had bought me tickets to a Yankee Angels game. And I had gotten to meet Derek Jeter from far away, but, I kind of got to meet him, and I was so excited, and he was like, wow, that's so cool. And I guess he had tickets to the game that night, and so he was also going to that same series. And the following Sunday, he showed up to church with a birthday card for me that was signed by the whole Yankee lineup. And he had taken the time after the game to go have that card. He took a birthday card to the game and took the time to have it signed for me, just because he knew that we liked the same baseball team, and he had heard that it was my birthday. So much like JT's picture, just going completely out of his way to do something extremely special for somebody, that is how I remember Paul.
My favorite memories of Paul was teaching preschool with him here at the church, and he was always so good and so silly with the kids. And our last activity every Sunday was having the kids do their coloring page, and they'd go, I'm done. And he'd be like, nope, you got to color the nosies and the toesies. And he would make them go back and fill in. Nope, I still see white on that paper. Keep coloring. And he was always so fun with the kids. That's one of my favorite memories. Another one was at home group at the English's house, and he was in charge of teaching the kids. And he grew an actual pumpkin, a real big, not pumpkin, watermelon. This huge one. It was like this big. I have the pictures, April. I'll send them to you later. I should have sent them sooner. And he had this whole story for them. And then we cut it open and we saw the seeds, and he had this whole story planned out for all these kids. And that's one of my favorite memories and my kids' favorite memories. And then also at home group, Paul's practical humor, his joking. He knew my husband hated sour cream. And so he brought this chocolate cake, and he had Ryan eat it. And he's like, isn't it so good? Yeah, it's so good. And then he was like, ha! It has sour cream. And Ryan never trusted him again after that. And just his sense of humor was always amazing and just so special, and so many sweet memories.
Hello, my name is Nicole Girardi. I knew Paul from My Art, which you heard was a very huge part of his life, as well as mine and my sister's. And Paul was definitely like a big brother. I remember that he would bring my sister and I Easter baskets and leave it on our doorstep. And back in the day, when I was young, there was something called a Tamagotchi, if anybody remembers those. And when I first got one, I was so excited, and we were performing and stuff like that, so we'd pass it around and let people take care of it. And I remember mine died, and he started calling me Killer. So that was my that was my new name for a long time. Whenever he would send me, he wouldn't call me Nicole, he'd call me Killer. And my sister, she was casted as Oliver in the play Oliver, where she had to be a little boy, and she had very long brown hair, and she had to chop it off, and he called her Butch, and that was her that was her nickname. And April actually still calls Brittany Butch to this day, after however long it's been, years and years. But I know for the My Art family that Paul was such a blessing to all of us, and he really did have that loving spirit, and we really did view him as an older sibling. And it's always nice to have a strong male influence like that in your life, somebody that not only loves you, but you can play with and can make you laugh and just be that strong male presence. So we are very honored to be here celebrating his life today with all of you.
Hi, I'm the infamous Stephanie. Yes, it was my fault all those years ago. So one of my favorite memories of Paul, and it's kind of a collection of them, April's family moved away to Kansas at some point. Everything blurs together. But her younger sister, Veronica, she and I are about the same age, so we were always buddies when they would come to visit. And the fun thing was, whenever they came to visit, Paul would take us to go get Cold Stone or Marble Slab, one or the other. We loved ice cream. But you know Paul, he couldn't just take us right there, right? So he would make us give him the directions. 2 10, 12-year-old girls don't know how to drive, don't know where we're going. We would get in the car and he would just drive straight until we said turn right or turn left. And somehow we would always end up at Cold Stone. And I remember one time in particular, he made us play Chutes and Ladders. And if we beat him, then we got to go to Cold Stone. So we're playing and Veronica wins and we're like, yes, we get to go to Cold Stone. And he goes, Stephanie didn't beat me yet. So we had to play again. I think he may have let me win, but I'll just always remember that. It was, well, it was frustrating at the time. I remember we had a pact, Veronica and I were like, okay, if we just don't say anything, then he has to turn eventually, right? He can't just like keep going straight forever. So we had our little ruse to get us to Cold Stone, but that just always meant so much. It was playful, it was frustrating, but it's a memory I wouldn't trade for anything. Yeah, and just to see how happy he made April, and what a great father he was to Kayla. Yeah, we love the guy. That's all.
Hi, I'm Ellen. Christina and I were friends from the time we were tiny, and I lived around the corner. And so Paul was kind of my official, merciless older brother. In fact, I used to talk really high and really, really, really fast. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's like Cinderella's mice in the movie. And so every time I call on the phone, hello, is Christine there? And he go, Santarelli's on the phone. Santarelli. Like, I walk in the door, Santarelli. And he was like, he'd follow me around because I was, tiny and at the time, and it was something. And it's funny because that nickname, and talk about nicknames like follow you through a whole life. My whole life is based on this nickname. People to this day call me Mouse. And my first email was the Flying Mouse. And when I got my first car, it was the Flying Mouse's taxi service. And it's kind of funny because I haven't seen him or talked to him in the 18 years since you got married. And, but that part of my identity was with him. So, thank you.
My name is Brandon. I am one of Paul's friends from Myart. As Paul was known as the big brother of Myart, I was affectionately known as the wayward child of Myart because of all of the shenanigans that I got into both during rehearsals and in my own private life, to which most people in this room can attest. I was brought to Myart when I was younger by another person in this room, Megan Sullivan, who was my next door neighbor. Where is Megan? Oh, it's right there. She brought me to Myart because she knew that I needed some place to give me structure and to let out all of the angst that I had inside me. When I met Paul introduced me to his founding, as a founding member of what he affectionately called the He-Man Women's Hater Club, which these two gentlemen to my left were founding members of, and only one female who was ever allowed into that private club, who is here today as well, Asia. He took us on adventures. We are, as David mentioned earlier, these same gentlemen, myself, Bobby, and a couple other people who aren't here today, we're part of the Coconuts, that were affectionately known as the Honda Centers, or as the Pond of Anaheim's Dancing Coconut Bra and Grass Skirt Club. But that was Paul. That was what he did. That's how he engaged the world. He was just a unique individual. He also took me on the longest road trip of my life to find every Athenian burger that existed, all of which I believe were 9 or 10 or something like that through 2 states. It was an amazing thing. The interesting part, and I think what to me is most significant about what Paul did for me in my life, because he knew me when I was younger. He saw me grow up. I saw him grow up. And there was a period of time in my life where things, like what David said as him, probably growing into a life of crime, things got pretty close for me. When I hit rock bottom in my life, having been friends with him for 10 years prior to that, he told me, he said, Brandon, you don't understand the potential that you have in your life. You don't see. I know your life has been hard. I know you've been through stuff, but you don't see what I see. He said, and you owe me, because I've picked you up and I've taken you off from places that you should have never been. He said, you owe me, so you're going to go to church with me. That Sunday, I went to church for the first time. That following Sunday was the Harvest Crusade. And it was God using Paul in my life prior to that brought me to that place where I began my relationship with Christ. And I don't know if Jeff remembers, but it was through your pastoral leadership, your church, and Paul's influence in my life that I've been walking with Christ for the last 25 years. We had, as time goes on, you fall apart from each other. We changed churches. I went to a different, moved to a different place. But I never stopped walking with Christ. His example and the fact that I saw Paul and knew Paul before he married you and the person that he was, and to see what Christ did in his life. It's the reason that I'm here, literally why I'm still alive, and why I've been married to my wife for the past 15 years. It's because the example that he showed me through your marriage. I know that God used him very specifically because nobody else could be present in my life the way he was, to know me from the place where I was to the place where Christ was taking me. Nobody else had that clout with me. But he did, because I valued who he was and his presence in my life and his ability to be used by Christ. And he's the reason that I'm here. And I think you needed to know that. So, you never know who has influence in your life and the people that God puts into your life. But God will always be faithful to reveal to you why he's put people in your life. And he uses everyday, ordinary people who sometimes have very loud and eccentric personalities to get you to come to him. So that's my memory of Paul. And I'm very fortunate to say that I will be seeing him again.
Brandon, that was such a great testimony. I share that with you, brother. And Paul was such a great brother. I am an old friend. Go way back and to my art days and early Bridges days. I see so many friends here. And one of my first memories of Paul is in a very large, shaggy-headed dog costume. And I don't think he auditioned for that role, Dana. Or it was not a dream role, nor did he want to be on stage, I think, at that time. Where's Christine? Oh, there you are. Yeah, sorry. But there was a need. And that turned to be true of Paul. He, as so many said in this room, always could see the need before anyone else could, and didn't have pride in his heart to let that pass by. He would fill it. And
so I love that, and I love that it brought him into theater and all the memories there. So fun. He was my little Abner, my Cowardly Lion, and we had so much fun. And then came church too, and that was such a special years. And in a world of theater, as many of us know, it is a place where it's so easy to chase the spotlight, but Paul never did that. And whether he's moving a set or he performing on stage, he definitely didn't lack talent. He was just naturally talented and comfortable. Had a beautiful voice, and many of us know this about him, but where he shined the most, I think, is just his role of that humble servant. And I know he's a goofball and all those things, but he'd just serve people. And I was thinking about him today, and I was reminded of Apostle Paul's words of just the reminder just to do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but to consider others more important than yourselves. And that was him. You know, he pointed us to the example of Jesus. And Brandon, thank God he did that for you. Because that, in the end, is the greatest role he played. And I know that he is welcomed greatly where he is now with the Lord. So anyways, I thank you for letting us share.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bobby. I've known Paul for a long time. I just wanted to share a couple of quick, funny stories. There was a coconut game, a bullfrog game, but they were coconut games to us. And Paul was Rhino Man for a game for the San Jose Rhinos. They were playing, and so Paul dressed up as Rhino Man for that day, and he was going to be our arch rival. And so he would do a thing where he would run out on the floor as Rhino Man, and fans at the game, were coming up to us privately going, "Hey, are you guys going to do something about that guy? Or, he's really sticking it to you guys." And we just went, "No, he drove us. So no, we're not." Paul used to take us to the horse races, and so we went to Santa Anita opening night for the thoroughbreds to go. Yeah, we would, bet on the horses, but really we went there to yell at the jockeys as they, especially the ones that lost when they were coming back, we taunt them a little bit. But there was one at opening night at Santa Anita for the thoroughbreds. There was they were doing a television thing, and they had the very serious horse racer analysis, and they had the TV set up and the cameras, and they had the whole set right in the middle of where the crowd was. And Paul went as close as he could without being on camera, and when the race goes, he's going, "Oh yeah, go, go, go," and yelling to disrupt their broadcast. So that he was screaming as loud as he could, and Paul had some pipes, he could scream to where even one of the hosts, I remember one of the hosts gave him this look like, "Who is this maniac?" And they're even telling him like, stop, and he kept going, and then he finally, sorry, he had no idea what he was doing to their broadcast, and then he turns around and you see the big smile on his face where he knew exactly what he was doing, and lastly there was a million years ago. In 95, it was the first and last time I ever got a speaking part in a musical. And Paul had told me, he said, opening night, I'm going to be there in the front row, and I'm going to have a sign that says jerk. And I'm going to hold it up, and if you break character, he would have probably hit me if I broke character or something. And sure enough, opening night, I walked out on stage, and there's Paul, and Mike was sitting next to him. And he's got this sign. It's just a piece of paper that he wrote in pink highlighter, outlined in black, that said jerk. And I walk out on stage, and he's holding it up just to where I can, I would be able to see it. And I thought, oh, I am in trouble. And thankfully, I had to go up on a riser. And so the lights were coming down, and I could not see him. So I got spared because I know I wouldn't have been able to hold it together. But after the show, he made sure to tell me how proud he was that I didn't break character, because he was motivating me in his way to take it seriously, and he was proud that I did not break character. So I guess I can say now it was only because of the lights so that saved me. So I'm going to miss him.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm not the little one. The little one's over there, Kayla. Everybody confuses us because we're sisters. I lived with April, Paul, and Kayla for a couple of years after, I came up and I thought I was going to be cool, but I'm not cool. I lived with Paul, April, and Kayla for a couple of years after I moved from Long Beach. And there was a time when I was auditioning for Disney's Tale of the Lion King. And Paul was such a supportive person in general of me and like my life and stuff. But this particular audition process, I had to go on, I think, 8 different rounds of auditions. They really put me through the ringer. And every morning when I would get up to go to these auditions, Paul would have something laying out for me for like a gift in the morning. And, you know, it would always be lion themed and for good luck. And he had this keychain, this lion keychain. He let me keep it for like 3 weeks because he was sure that this was the audition, this was the audition, this was the audition. And every time I would come home just downtrodden, and Paul worked nights, so he'd be there to catch me. And, you know, we'd sit and we'd talk for a minute, and I'd, you know, fume and steam around the living room, again. And he's like, you know, you'll get your opportunity. And so the last day, he had this little lion hat. And the last day he goes, I think I've got what you need. And he turns to me and he like hands me the little lion hat, and he was like, I think you should wear this for luck. I didn't wear the lion hat, obviously. But I did go to the audition and book the job that day, which was really nice. And then when I came home, Paul was just so excited when I, you know, got the call and I told them, and everybody was so excited. But then I had to do overnight rehearsals, and Paul worked overnights, and so he would help me like during the week, like teach me how to prepare for overnight rehearsals. You know, this is what you got to do. You got to sleep during the day. This is the time you should get up. Blah blah blah. And there was a week where we didn't have rehearsals. But during that week, I stayed up still because, you know, I didn't want to get off the sleep schedule because that was, Paul said, don't get off the sleep schedule. Don't do it. So I was like, yeah, anything you say, you know. And during that week, Paul was awake during his days off. And I just remember we would sit and have these really long and beautiful conversations about life. And he was like a dad to me. And I was dating some guy at the time, and he asked me all these very specific dad-like questions, you know. But Paul always cared for me and April and Kayla with such a quiet confidence and kindness. No matter what the situation was, he was always there. And sometimes the jokes were a little much. But always he had this beautiful heart and spirit that he would do anything for any one of us. And I'm so grateful, you know. I recently am like searching for a new car, and all I could think was, gosh, I wish our planner, our idea guy was here. So he's deeply missed, and especially, I know, by April and Kayla, but definitely by me too. So I'm really glad to be here and glad to support you guys, so thank you.
Hey, I'm going to be selfish and talk real quick. My name's Ryan. I was one of Paul's best friends for years and years and years. And been a ghost like the last 10 years, so hi to everyone who hasn't seen me. but I was one of the first test kids for Paul. I firmly believe that. He met me at a time where I was like 12 or 13 years old, and anyone who's done musical theater in 12, 13 years old for boys, there's not many people to hang out with. So I can hang out with like the 8-year-olds, or I can hang out with like the teenagers, but I wasn't cool enough to get up there, right? So Paul one day came up to me and he was like, hey, I'm planning a Disneyland trip, you should come with us. And I was like, cool. So then I go to my mom, and I was like, hey mom, I'm gonna go to Disneyland with the teenagers. She says, no. So I had to go tell Paul no. The amazing thing is this 18, 19-year-old kid set up a meeting with my mom, went into a room in my house, closed the door, talked to her for about an hour or two, and I don't know what was promised, I don't know what was said, but when they came out, my mom said, if you're going to hang out with the teenagers, you have to be with Paul. And for the next 10 or 12 years, I was with him for like 300 days of the year. So I took that advice, and it paid off very well. Through those 10, 12, 15 years, I have so many memories that I could stand up here for a month and talk, but I hate talking in front of people, so I'm just going to say I love Paul. He was my big brother. He was a big brother to everyone in here, and I understand that, but he will be dearly, dearly missed and thought about every day. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. Paul was technically my second cousin. I never really got the family tree right until a few years ago, but we always called him Uncle. He wasn't really our uncle, but he was that uncle figure that we never had. I never had uncles. And ever since I was a little kid, he was always our goofball. That's what he called me and my little sister and my older sister, goofballs. And there were many, many times, many memories. I can't even pinpoint like one specifically that I love the most because I just love them all. There was a lot of times where we went to Disneyland. That was our favorite thing. We grew up on Disney. We loved Disney. And he would always take us there and play jokes on us. And even when it was time to leave and we were sad and didn't want to leave, he would do little jokes like we were going up the escalator, going to the parking lot, and he would go, April's favorite ride, woo! And he would just put a little spin on everything just to make us laugh. I never saw him sad. I never saw him angry. He was always just so happy and positive. And I feel like that positivity really just came off onto the three of us girls. And even to this day, I'm very much a positive person, and I feel like he made me that goofball. He made me that positive person that I am today. And I feel so blessed and lucky to have that gift that he gave me just to be that goofball. And I'm going to carry it for the rest of my life, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think I can speak for my sisters when I say we'll miss him. We will miss our uncle, and we will miss everything about him.
I am, my dad was Paul, and one of my favorite memories with him is that I was in a 6th grade class. Some of my classmates are here. And I purchased this poster with like the school money, and it said think, and think stood for thoughtful, is it helpful, is it inspiring, is it necessary, and is it kind? And it's on my wall right now, and this is one of the most best things that I could have, and I've purchased at that school store because it's just, he would always ask me, are you thinking? I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And he's like, the poster that you purchased in Mrs. Monty's class. So I'm like, oh, yes, I am. Like, I would ask him, like, oh, should I buy this thing at this store? And he'd be like, well, think. And I'd be like, okay. And one of my other favorite memories with him is when I was driving to school with him, and we were driving in the car, and he was just singing out the window, pour some sugar on me, to the radio. And I was just like lounged down, and I was just like trying to hide. And I just remember this one guy when he was walking down the street, and he just was like, oh my gosh, that guy is so weird. And I remember coming into class and telling Mrs. Monty that, oh my gosh, my dad is so embarrassing. No, Dad, is as embarrassing as mine. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Myart, or according to Paul, Too Funky. So I just wanted to say, I'm kind of saying the same thing everyone else is kind of saying, big brother, even to us girls, you know, because I was like 11 when he took me out to 2 in the morning, and my mom freaked out. We went to 3 different Hops Huts, I think, that night because we needed to get some pie. But he was so great and so loving and so caring and so fun that my mom allowed me to do it again at 13. And I wasn't allowed to stay out to 2 in the morning again until I was a senior in high school. So, so I just wanted to thank everyone in Myart and through Paul and everyone else. Like it was such a important time for me. I was made fun of a ton, and it was a place where I had my family, and he accepted me, and so then everyone accepted me, and it was just such a great experience, and I will miss him. So thank you.
Right. The awkward stare works. Yeah.
My name's Randy Salerno. I met Paul at Theo Lacey Jail. He wasn't my cellmate. We actually worked there together. And for some reason, sports came up.